My name is Lena Whitmore. I'm 32 years old. And the night my brother got engaged was the night my entire family decided, out loud, that I was the family failure. The venue was expensive. Too expensive for someone who, according to my parents, was still finding herself. Crystal chandeliers, live violin music, white roses everywhere. The kind of place people rent to look successful. Not because they are. Before I continue, please like and subscribe, but only if this story truly resonates with you. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from tonight and what time is it there? My brother Daniel stood at the center of it all, smiling like a man who believed he had won life. And according to my family, he had. I arrived alone. No date. No +1. Just me in a simple black dress I bought myself, with my own money. I hugged my mother first. She looked me up and down and said, "You came alone?" That was the greeting. Not hi. Not, "You look nice." Just a reminder that I hadn't met their expectations yet. I smiled. "Congratulations to Daniel." She nodded distractedly and turned away the moment she saw one of her sisters approaching. That set the tone. Within 10 minutes, it started. "Still at that little consulting job?" my uncle asked, loud enough for others to hear. "I thought she quit already." My cousin laughed. "Didn't she try to start a business once?" My aunt leaned in, voice dripping with pity. "Don't worry, sweetheart. Not everyone is meant to be ambitious." They laughed. Openly, comfortably. My brother didn't stop them. He just sipped his drink and let it happen. My parents didn't stop them either. My father even smiled, like it was harmless fun. I said nothing. I had learned a long time ago that defending yourself in this family only made them laugh harder. The irony was almost impressive, because the company logo printed on every menu, every banner, every gift bag at that party, it was mine. They just didn't know it yet. To them, I was still the younger sister who didn't try hard enough, the one who didn't marry well, didn't brag enough, didn't look successful enough to deserve respect. What they didn't know was that I had paid for this entire night without using my last name even once. The band, the venue, the catering, all of it. They thought Daniel's future father-in-law was well-connected. They thought luck had finally smiled on him. They never once thought to ask me what I did for a living. As the speeches began, my mother tapped her glass proudly. "This night wouldn't have been possible without generous support," she announced, eyes shining. People clapped. I watched them clap for something I built. And when my aunt leaned over and whispered, "At least one of you turned out successful," I smiled into my wine glass, because the announcement was coming, and when it did, there would be no laughter left to hide behind. I wasn't always invisible to my family. I became invisible the moment I stopped fitting the role they assigned me. In our house, success had a very specific shape. It looked like my brother Daniel, confident, loud, always talking about his plans, even when they weren't real yet. He dropped out of college twice, but somehow that was called exploring options. When he failed, it was temporary. When I succeeded quietly, it was suspicious. I was the opposite. I didn't announce things until they were done. I didn't ask for help. I didn't need approval. And that, to my parents, was unsettling. When I graduated, my mother asked one question. "So what's next?" Not congratulations. Not "we're proud of you." Just what else I was supposed to prove. When Daniel quit another job 6 months later, they told him to take his time. "Not everyone figures it out early," my father said. Apparently, that rule didn't apply to me. I started my company 3 years after college. Quietly. No launch party. No family announcement. I didn't even use my last name. I'd learned by then that anything connected to me became a topic of judgment, not support. The company grew slowly at first, then faster. By the second year, we had clients my family bragged about knowing, without knowing they were talking about me. By the third year, I was the majority owner. Still, I said nothing. Not because I was hiding, but because every time I imagined telling them, I could already hear the response. Oh, that's nice. But is it stable? Isn't that risky? You should help your brother get in on that. So I kept my work separate from my family. Clean lines, clear boundaries, which is how I ended up sitting at my brother's engagement party, listening to people laugh at me while standing in a room I had paid for. Daniel found me near the bar halfway through the night. He smelled like expensive cologne and confidence. "Did you see this place?" he said, spreading his arms like he owned it. "Wild, right?" "It's beautiful," I said. He smirked. "Yeah, my future in-laws really came through." That wasn't true, but I let him believe it. He leaned closer. "So, still doing your thing? Or are you finally thinking of something more stable?" There it was. The same line. Different year. "I'm good," I said. He laughed softly. "That's what you always say." Then he walked away before I could respond, already bored with the conversation. Across the room, my parents stood beaming beside the bride's family. My mother kept gesturing around, soaking in compliments about the party. My father nodded along like he'd earned every bit of it. Not once did either of them look in my direction. That's when the event coordinator approached me. She was nervous, professional, but nervous. "Ms. Whitmore," she said quietly, "we're about 5 minutes out from the sponsor acknowledgement. Are you ready?" I met her eyes. "Yes," I said. "I'm ready." She nodded and hurried off. No one noticed that exchange. No one noticed me straighten my posture, set my glass down, and take a slow breath. They were too busy laughing. They thought the night was already decided. They were wrong, because in 5 minutes, they were going to learn something they had never bothered to ask. And once it was said out loud, it could never be taken back. The music softened, and the lights dimmed just enough to signal that something important was about to happen. People drifted back to their tables, still smiling, still buzzing from champagne and confidence. My family settled near the front, exactly where they liked to be, visible, admired, photographed. Daniel stood beside his fiancée, arm wrapped around her waist, enjoying the attention like it was oxygen. I stayed where I was, near the edge, where I'd always been placed. The event host stepped onto the small stage, microphone in hand. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "before we continue with the evening, we'd like to take a moment to thank the company whose generous sponsorship made tonight possible." Applause started immediately. My mother clapped first, loudly, proudly. I heard my aunt whisper, "I heard it's owned by someone very powerful." Someone behind me laughed. Well, at least one person in this family married into success. A few people glanced at me when that was said. Not embarrassed. Amused. I didn't react. The host continued, reading from his card. "This company has been instrumental in supporting community events and family-owned businesses throughout the city." My father leaned toward Daniel. "See? This is the kind of network you need." Daniel nodded, already convinced the compliment belonged to him by association. "And tonight," the host said, "we're honored to have the founder and majority owner with us." That got their attention. The room shifted, chairs straightened, heads turned. My brother's future father-in-law adjusted his tie, clearly expecting to be acknowledged. The host smiled. "Please join me in welcoming—" He paused, just long enough to make it uncomfortable. "Lena Whitmore." For half a second, nothing happened. No applause, no movement, just silence. Then the room reacted. Wrong. People looked at my brother. Daniel blinked. "What?" My mother laughed. A short, confused sound. That's my daughter's name." A few chuckles rippled through the room. Uncertain. Awkward. The host looked up from his card. "Yes," he said calmly. "Ms. Lena Whitmore, founder and majority owner of Whitmore Solutions, tonight's sponsor." The laughter died instantly. Every head turned toward me, not gradually, All at once, I felt it like a physical shift in the air. My father stood halfway out of his chair. "That's not funny," he said sharply. The host frowned. "Sir." My mother's face drained of color. Daniel stared at me like he was seeing a stranger. "You?" he said. "No, that's not right." I stepped forward. Not fast, not slow. Just enough for everyone to see me clearly. "Yes," I said into the microphone the host handed me. My voice didn't shake. "It's me." The room was silent now, painfully so. I looked at my family, at the same people who had laughed minutes ago. "This company," I continued, "is mine. I founded it. I own controlling interest. And yes, I paid for tonight." My mother opened her mouth. Nothing came out. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't smile. "I wasn't going to say anything," I added, "but I think it's important that credit goes where it belongs." Someone near the back cleared their throat. The host nodded respectfully and stepped aside. I handed the microphone back. Then I walked off the stage. Behind me, the room exploded, not with applause, but with whispers. Shock, confusion, regret. My family didn't move. They just stared, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel small in their silence. I felt taller than all of them, because now they knew, and there was no way to laugh it away. No one clapped, not because they didn't know how, but because they didn't know who they were anymore in that moment. The music didn't start back up right away. The staff hesitated. The host hesitated. Everyone waited for my family to react. My mother recovered first. She always did. She forced a smile so tight it looked painful and laughed softly, as if this were all some elaborate misunderstanding. "Well," she said too brightly, "isn't that surprising? Surprising? Not impressive, not proud, just inconvenient." My father finally sat back down, his face stiff, jaw clenched. He didn't look at me. Not once. Daniel, on the other hand, looked like the floor had shifted under him. "You're joking," he said under his breath when I passed by his table. "You have to be—" I stopped. For the first time that night, I looked directly at him. "I'm not," I said. Quiet. Clear. "The contracts are in my name. The company's registered to me. The invoices were paid by my firm." His fiancée stood frozen beside him, confusion written all over her face. "You never told us," she said, not accusing, just stunned. Daniel swallowed. "Because she's not—" He didn't finish the sentence, because he didn't know what story to tell anymore. My aunt leaned forward from her table, voice sharp now. "So what? You just decided to show off tonight?" I turned to her. "No," I said. "I decided to stop pretending I was smaller than I am." That landed harder than anything else I'd said. My mother stood abruptly. "Lena, this isn't the time. This night is about your brother." I nodded. "That's why I didn't announce it. Someone else did." Her lips pressed into a thin line. Around us, conversation stalled and restarted in hushed tones. People who had laughed earlier now avoided my eyes. Others stared openly, recalculating everything they thought they knew. My father finally spoke. "If this is true," he said slowly, "why didn't you ever tell us?" I didn't answer right away, because the answer wasn't complicated. It was just uncomfortable, because every time I tried to talk about my work, I said, "You told me to be more realistic, more modest, more helpful to my brother." Daniel flinched. "I didn't want my success to become another family argument," I continued. "So I kept it separate from the people who had never believed in it anyway." The bride's father cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable. "I think there's been some confusion," he said carefully. "But it's impressive. Truly." My mother turned to him instantly, relief flooding her face. Yes. Lena's always been very capable. Now that it benefited her." The band began playing again, softly at first, The party resumed, but it wasn't the same. Something had cracked, and no one could pretend it hadn't. Because the truth was out now, and it had a name. The party continued, but the laughter never found its way back. It was replaced by something else. Careful voices, forced smiles, people speaking without really saying anything. My mother stayed close to me after that. Too close. She touched my arm when she spoke, laughed a little too loudly at my comments, made sure anyone nearby heard her say things like, "I always knew Lena would do something big, always." I didn't correct her, not because I agreed, but because watching her rewrite history in real time was almost fascinating. My father approached next, holding a drink he hadn't touched. "You should have told us," he said quietly, like I'd broken some unspoken rule. I met his eyes. "You never asked." That ended the conversation. Daniel avoided me completely for nearly 20 minutes. When he finally came over, his face was tight with frustration. "So you just let everyone think I was the one connected?" he hissed. "You let them congratulate me." "I didn't let anyone think anything," I said. "They assumed." "That's not the same," he snapped. "You embarrassed me." I almost laughed. "Instead," I said, "you embarrassed yourself when you laughed along." That shut him up. His fiancée stood a few steps behind him, arms crossed, watching us with a new expression. Not admiration, not anger. Evaluation. She was seeing him differently now, and he knew it. My aunt tried one last time. "Well," she said sharply, "if you're so successful, why are you still so distant from the family?" There it was, the question that always followed my achievements. "Why aren't you more useful to us?" I took a breath. Because distance is what happens when you're only valued once you're impressive. No one argued with that. The event coordinator appeared at my side again, eyes apologetic. "Ms. Whitmore, just so you know, if you'd like, we can add your name to the welcome signage." I shook my head. "No, I'm leaving soon." My mother's head snapped toward me. "Leaving? Already?" "Yes, but dessert. I've had enough." I picked up my coat. Daniel watched me, panic flickering beneath his anger. "Are you seriously going to walk out of my engagement party?" I looked at him one last time. "I didn't come to be celebrated," I said. "I came to stop being mocked." Then I walked toward the exit. Behind me, the party went on. But something fundamental had shifted. They could keep the music, the flowers, the photos. I was taking something far more valuable with me, the truth. And once people see you clearly, they can never unsee it. I didn't make a scene when I left. No slammed doors, no dramatic goodbye. Just a quiet exit through the side hall, past the same staff who had been so polite all evening. My phone buzzed before I even reached the parking lot. "Mom, we need to talk." "Dad, call me when you get home." "Daniel." What the hell was that? I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I sat in my car for a moment, hands on the steering wheel, and let the adrenaline settle. Then I made one call. "Hi," I said when my CFO picked up. "It's Lena. I need you to freeze all non-essential discretionary spending effective immediately." A pause. "Specifically," I continued, "anything tied to personal events under the Whitmore family umbrella." She didn't ask questions. She never did. "Consider it done," she said. I drove home. By the time dessert was being served at the party, the caterer had already received a notification that payment processing had been paused pending review. Not canceled. Paused. Just enough to cause panic. My mother called again as I pulled into my driveway. This time, I answered. "What did you do?" she demanded, skipping any pretense of concern. "I went home," I said. "You know that's not what I mean." I leaned back in my seat. "Then be specific." There was shouting in the background. Daniel's voice. The event manager's voice. Someone asking about invoices. My mother lowered her tone. "You're humiliating your brother." "No," I said calmly. "I'm removing myself from a situation where I was disrespected." "You paid for this," she snapped. "You can't just—" I interrupted. And I did. Silence. Then, softer. Lena, this is family. I closed my eyes. This, I said, is business. She hung up on me. The next morning, my father showed up at my apartment, unannounced, just like they always did when they wanted control back. He sat on my couch, hands folded, trying to look reasonable. You've made your point, he said. There's no need to punish everyone. I'm not punishing anyone, I replied. I'm setting boundaries, he sighed. Your brother's future wife's family is asking questions. This affects more than just you. I met his gaze. That didn't seem to matter when I was the joke. He had no answer for that. By noon, the company's legal team had already drafted a clean statement. Whitmore Solutions is not affiliated with any personal family events beyond existing contractual obligations. Professional, final. The fallout was immediate. Vendors started calling Daniel instead of me. Invoices were redirected. Explanations were demanded. And for the first time in his life, my brother had to answer questions without someone else covering the cost. That evening, his fiancée called me. Her voice was careful, polite. I didn't know, she said. About everything. I know, I replied. A pause. Then, I think we need to postpone the wedding. I didn't ask why. I didn't need to. After I hung up, I stood by my window, watching the city lights blink on one by one. I felt no triumph, just relief, because consequences don't have to be loud to be effective. Sometimes, all you have to do is stop paying for other people's illusions. The wedding never happened. Not officially, at least. There was no announcement, no dramatic breakup post. Just a quiet change in tone when people asked about dates and venues. We're taking time, Daniel's fiancée told them, and everyone pretended not to understand what that really meant. I didn't ask. No one asked me either. The family group chat went silent for weeks. Then my mother tried to revive it with photos from an old vacation, like nostalgia could glue things back together. I muted it. My father sent one last message. We didn't raise you to be so cold. I read it twice. Then I deleted it. Because what they called cold was just me, no longer absorbing the heat of their expectations. Daniel stopped calling after the vendors did. Once he realized there was no money to argue with, no leverage to reclaim, the anger fizzled into something smaller. Embarrassment. Maybe. Or fear. I wasn't interested in naming it. A month later, I attended a client event hosted by my company. No family, no explanations. Just people who knew exactly who I was because I'd built something they respected. Someone asked how I started. I told the truth. I stopped waiting for permission. That was all. Sometimes I think back to that engagement party. The laughter, the assumptions, the way they spoke about me like I wasn't in the room. They weren't cruel because they hated me. They were cruel because it was convenient. And the moment it stopped being convenient, they didn't know who they were anymore. I didn't win anything that night. I didn't gain their respect. But I lost something far heavier. The need for it. And that, finally, was enough.